Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to part 2 of my new stereo installation on my 2005 Honda Accord. So at this point, what I'm doing is running the camera wire from the stereo to the trunk of the car. I'm using fish wire. Fish wire really wasn't a good option. I think there was probably something more convenient. It was just too, it was not malleable enough. At this point, I'm attaching the microphone to the steering wheel right behind the steering wheel, I should say. And now I'm moving on to the USB cables, which is pretty straightforward. I simply run it through the back of the glove box. This here is installation of the GPS unit. The wire goes behind the trim piece. There's actually a hole there that I used. I didn't realize it initially. I was running it under the panel, but it was compressing the wire, and I ended up going through this hole that was already there, which was presumably there for that specific reason. Then I attach it to the stereo. After attaching the GPS wire, I can go ahead and tighten up the bolts again and reinsert the panel, as well as affix the GPS to the dashboard. Okay, now I can start the installation of the reverse camera. To start the installation, I will have to plug in the camera yellow to yellow, and also crimp some spade connectors into the red wire and attach it to the stereo. Here I'm using the universal wire stripper to connect the spade connector. I like to check for continuity to make sure that the crimp is good. If I don't get it, then obviously I have to redo the crimp. It's just a sanity check. It becomes easier to do it right now than to wait to the very end and have to remove a lot of pieces. Okay, at this point, I'm going to start running the camera wire behind the steering wheel, through the side of the car, through the back seat of the car, through the trunk of the car, and ultimately come out through the trunk and into the license plate, or near the license plate, I should say. Running the wire behind the steering wheel was pretty easy. I simply attached the wires together to an existing wire using Tessa tape. At this point, I start to remove the trim pieces from the side of the car. I have some trim tools that came in really handy, and I'm sure they'll show up in the frame at some point. So there's already existing wire there. I simply run the camera wire right next to that same wire and use the Tessa tape to secure it tightly. I actually waited to the end of the installation of the camera before tightening or affixing the wire to the existing wire using Tessa tape, because in case there's a situation where I have to fix something, I don't want to have to remove the pieces over again. More or less, I wait till the very end. Now I'm reattaching the panel behind the steering wheel, since that's already been secured. And removing the piece isn't very hard at all. There's this little section that runs vertically that was really tough to open, and so I did what I could. I removed the rear trim and didn't remove that side vertical piece. I ended up just squeezing the wire through. I wasn't able to find a reference or figure out a way to remove the piece. I'm sure had I made enough effort, I would have removed it successfully, but I thought it was just a small distance, so I didn't think it was worth the trouble of removing it. So I'm running the wire, and at this point it's near the back seat. I'm gonna run it. So I'll run it through here. I'm going to take these screws off and then run it under, and then head to the reverse light. I used this clip removal tool to remove some of the clips. Running the wire through the back seat was one of the toughest parts of the job. I had to use a pry bar, and even then I didn't do a very good job, so I essentially used a pry bar to open it up slightly and allow me to run the cable. And after a bit of struggle, I was able to do it. Okay, at this point I'm running the wire into the trunk. I'll continue running it through the side panel and eventually run it up into the trunk. The lid of the trunk, I should say. There's a trunk light that you can remove and run the wire through there so that you can attach the camera light to the trunk. Okay, so this one, we line up the arrows. That looks good. All that's left is these two wires that will be tapped into the reverse light. Okay, so one thing that was really tricky for me to understand was that you could turn the car on without turning the ignition on. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. So that's gonna be the ignition. The car is on, and now I'm going to put it in reverse. And it's not actually gonna go reverse because the car's off, but it's going to trigger the reverse light, which is what I need to trigger because I need to check for the positive cable. So that is showing power. This one is not. The reverse light is not showing power. So initially I had cut the loom there, but that was incorrect. That was a mistake here. This is the way I'm gonna go about it. I can't seem to find, my pliers are being used right now. And there's the tap, and then I will do this. So I'm going to ground it right on that screw. So I loosen it just enough to allow for the connector to squeeze in, and then I tighten it back up, and that'll serve as my ground. Okay, so this is the moment of truth. What I'll do is turn the car on without actually turning it on. I'll go ahead and put it in reverse, and the camera turned on. So cool. The T-tap connector worked, and now I am just going to tidy everything up and put everything back in place and do all the arrangements for that. And yeah, hopefully it helps someone out there doing the exact same job. A lot of these cars, you can give them updates to last you another 10 years instead of, you know, selling it and buying a new car and spending, you know, that 30,000, 40,000, 20,000. I like my Honda, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep it. One of the last things to do is to make sure that the camera is facing the right angle. It's gonna be a trial and error thing. As you can see, I'm actually looking at the stereo, but that's not a very good way to go about it. You're better off driving it, going in reverse, and getting the perspective from there. At this point, I know that the camera works, it turns on, and so I feel comfortable to actually fix it to the trunk. So I'm just wrapping the T-tap connector with some Tessa tape. That'll do it for the install of the reverse light camera.